They say a rat knows its territory better than the back of its own paw. For me, that territory was the labyrinth of alleys behind the crumbling Kingston apartments. A maze of cracked concrete, forgotten toys, and the ghosts of last night's garbage. I knew every loose brick, every puddle that never dried, every shadow that danced under the single, flickering bulb. I was the king of this forgotten kingdom, a tiny, furry monarch ruling over a domain of decay. My life was a simple rhythm: scrounge, survive, repeat. It was a good life, a predictable one, until the walls started to whisper. It began subtly, a faint murmur carried on the stale air, like the rustling of dry leaves where no trees grew. At first, I dismissed it. The city is full of strange noises. The groans of old pipes, the hum of distant traffic, the endless sigh of the wind. But this was different. It was a voice, a sibilant hiss that slithered through the cracks in the mortar. It spoke a language only we could understand, a language of instinct and promise. It promised warmth, safety, and mountains of discarded food. It whispered of a hidden pantry, a secret feast just beyond the next corner. The other rats, my brothers and sisters, my cousins and rivals, they heard it too. Their whiskers twitched with excitement. Their beady eyes, usually sharp with caution, glazed over with a strange, hungry fervor. One by one, they began to follow the whispers. An old, scarred male named Scab, a veteran of countless battles with cats and brooms, was the first I saw go. He scurried towards a dark opening under a sagging staircase, a place I knew led only to a sealed-off cellar. The whispers had promised him a forgotten wheel of cheese. He never came back. Then went Pip, a young, nimble female. The whispers crooned to her of a nest lined with the softest cotton, a safe haven from the cold. She darted into a narrow drain pipe that I knew was blocked solid with hardened cement just a few feet in. She vanished, and the silence she left behind was louder than any scream. I watched them go, a procession of the doomed, all marching to the siren song of the walls. Fear, cold and sharp, began to gnaw at me. This wasn't right. We are creatures of caution, of suspicion. We test the air, we check for traps, we trust our senses above all else. But this sound, this promise, it was overriding every instinct we had. I tried to warn them. I chittered, I squeaked, I blocked their path, but it was like they were sleepwalking. They pushed past me, their minds filled with visions of paradise, deaf to the frantic warnings of a friend. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving a tapestry of temptation that was impossible for them to resist. This way, they'd hiss, just a little further. The prize is so close, and each time, the path led to a dead end, a place from which there was no return. The population of my kingdom dwindled night by night. The once bustling alleys grew eerily quiet, populated only by ghosts and the seductive, deadly murmurs from the walls. I became an observer of this silent plague. I huddled in the shadows, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, and I watched. I started to notice a pattern. The whispers were always strongest in the deepest, most enclosed parts of the alley. They lured my kin away from the open spaces, away from the grates that let in the scent of rain and distant traffic, away from the slivers of moonlight. The whispers seemed to loathe the fresh air. I saw a young one, barely a teenager, hesitate near an air vent that pulsed with the cool night breeze. The whispers grew frantic, desperate, trying to pull him back into the darker passage. For a moment, he wavered, caught between the lure of the promise and the clean scent of the outside world. The whispers won. He turned his back on the vent and scurried into the darkness, to his doom. That was the key. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The whispers, the voices, they feared the open air. They thrived in the stale, stagnant pockets of the alley, but they recoiled from the breath of the world outside. The silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was a sanctuary. The whispers stopped near the air vents. They faded to nothing near the gaps under the fences that led to the street. The sound was the trap, and the silence was the escape route. A new plan formed in my terrified mind. I wouldn't run from the whispers anymore. I would use them. They were a compass, but I would follow them in reverse. Where the voices were loudest, I would turn away. Where they screamed of treasure, I knew there was only a tomb. I started my journey not following the sound, but following the silence. It was a terrifying game of reverse Marco Polo. The whispers were everywhere, calling my name, promising me everything I ever wanted. Here, they'd sing from a cracked foundation, a whole loaf of bread, just for you. I'd press myself against the opposite wall, where the sound was faintest, and scurry past. Down this pipe, they'd coax rivers of spilled milk. I'd climb over it, heading for a spot where the wind whistled, drowning them out. They grew angry, the seductive promises turned to threats. They hissed of cats with claws of razors and poison that brought a slow, agonizing end. But their anger only confirmed my theory. They were desperate to keep me in their prison. My path became a map of quiet places. I moved from one pocket of silence to another. A puddle reflecting the moon, a pile of leaves rustling in the breeze, the base of a lamppost humming with electricity. These were my safe havens. I followed the quiet trail, a breadcrumb path of nothingness. The other rats were gone now. I was the last one. The alleys felt cavernous, empty. The whispers focused all their energy on me, a cacophony of lies and threats echoing from every direction. But I had their measure now. I knew their weakness. My journey led me to the far end of the alley, to a place I'd always avoided. A large, gray-red sewer opening that smelled of damp earth and running water. The whispers were almost non-existent here, beaten back by the constant rush of air and the gurgle of the current below. This was the source of the silence. This was the way out. The whispers made one last, desperate attempt. They changed their tune. They mimicked the sound of my mother, a sound I hadn't heard since I was a pup, calling me back to the nest. For a heartbeat, I faltered. The instinct to turn back, to answer that call, was overwhelming. But then I looked at the grate. I could feel the cool, clean air on my whiskers. It was the scent of freedom. I ignored the ghost of my mother's voice and squeezed through the iron bars of the grate. I dropped into the shallow channel below, the cool water a welcome shock. Behind me, as I scurried away into the vast, unknown network of the city's underbelly, the whispers faded. And then, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the walls fell completely silent. I was alone, a refugee from a kingdom that had devoured itself. But I was alive, and I had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the most important thing to listen to is the silence. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content like this. Stay curious and stay safe.